Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting place. If we haven't had a chance to meet yet, my name is Garry, and I'm one of the pastors here. And thank you for deciding to choose some of your day with us today, hanging out with us. Whether that's right here in Theater 6, it's so good to see the faces. I can even smell you from here. No offense. But maybe you're joining us across the hall in our live stream venue or at home on live stream at the comfort of your own home. Wherever you are, we are just glad that you're here with us. As Russ mentioned, we're continuing on in a series called No Offence. And just before I jump in, I want to just remind you, back in second to last week in January, we had Camp Quanos here. We're going to have opportunities for us to all go down and help out in a practical way. But between now and then, the other way we can get involved is by sending a child to camp. And we've already got 5. We want to try and send 10. And these are kids from the neighborhood, your neighborhood, the city, that otherwise wouldn't be able to go to camp. Because a week at camp can make them feel like they're seen, they're heard, and they're loved. And so if you know of any names, please get them into us. You can do it just go to our website, themeetingplace.org, and you'll see a button there that says send a kid to camp. Give us the information, and we'll take it from there. But don't delay, because camps are starting to fill up. And we would hate to, hey, I got a name, and then, sorry, you can't go, camp's full. So, okay? So good on you. We've got 5 out of 10, so we're well on our way. Okay, so the other day I was asked by somebody how my day was going, and I said to them, it's going awesome, man. And they said, well, what's making it so awesome? And I said, I'm getting stuff done, right? And I said, everything I've planned is it's just going exactly how I thought my day would go. And when that happens, it's awesome, isn't it? Are you with me on that? Yeah, it's so great. And for me, and I'm guessing the same is true for you, when my day's rolling out like I think it should, man, life is just good. It's easy, it's enjoyable, it's lighter. Bumper-to-bumper traffic, lineups at checkouts, having to wear a mask, whatever the annoyance is, just doesn't annoy me. I don't care. But when the opposite happens, when things don't go the way I think they should go, it's a different story, right? So I'm going to just share a story with you here. Not long ago, I was having one of those days where it just was not going the way I thought it should go. I was meeting a friend I hadn't seen for a while. I was meeting him for a coffee, and I was looking forward to just sitting down and chatting with him. So we set up a meet at one of the coffee shops here in town. I showed up early, which is kind of my MO. If I'm 10 minutes early, I'm late. And I get there, and the place is packed. There's not a table to be had, which was unusual. I go to this coffee shop all the time, and there's usually a seat somewhere. Not today. Well, my friend hadn't arrived, so I thought, you know what, I got time. I'll just stand here, and I'll just keep an eye out. Someone will be moving along here pretty quick. No, nobody's moving anywhere, man. They're all dug in, right? And I look at my watch. I still got some time. And so I'm standing there waiting, and still nothing. Nobody's going anywhere. And that's when it happened. As I stood there waiting for a table to open, I'm scanning the coffee shop so I could just pounce on a table if one became available. I suddenly became very aware of my thoughts. I could suddenly and very clearly hear what I was saying to myself. And what I was doing is I was running this nonstop commentary on everyone that was sitting at a table. And it went something like this, okay? No judgment. We're going to be talking about that in just a little bit here. This is how it went, okay? I'm scanning the coffee shop, and I see 2 older ladies sitting there. So I'm looking at yeah, they're retired. They got nothing but time. Why do they have to be here? Why don't they just go home and come back at another time and leave the table for working folk? As I scan from them, I come across he's sitting by himself, this guy's sitting by himself at a table for 6. And I'm like, really, dude? Are you that clueless? Look how busy it is. And he even looked at me, so I'm sure he knew I was waiting for a table. And then I heard these girls laugh. And so I look, and there in the back of the shop, this coffee shop, there's a gaggle of girls sitting around a table. And they're all laughing. And I'm like, yeah, probably university students. They don't have a job. They're probably living off student loans, drinking $5, $6 coffees. But hey, enjoy yourself. I mean, on and on these stories went. And it was about that time that I realized, I became distinctly aware of what was happening. I was offended by these people. They were offending me. I mean, how dare they sit there and enjoy themselves while I needed a table? And here's as I'm standing there rolling these thoughts through my head, here's what happened. I began to resent these people. I began to resent these people because from where I was standing, it was clear that they didn't give one iota of anything towards my plight. They're just sitting there laughing away, just having a good time. Now, I began to feel kind of crappy about myself, so here's what I did. I began creating stories about them, right? Making judgments about them based on nothing but conjecture. I had no facts at all. I didn't know who these people were, but I did it in order to justify my resentment and how I was offended by them, because it just made me feel better about myself. I mean, how twisted is that? This is coming from a pastor. But you know what? It happens so easy, doesn't it, if we're really honest? 1 minute we're all giggles and smiles, and the next minute the vitriol is just kind of running through our brains. It's spewing from our lips, or it's leaking from our fingertips as we race across the keyboard to seek and justify our resentment towards someone or something that has offended us. Whether that's a comment on Facebook, Instagram, whatever it happens to be. And so as I'm working through this, a question came up for me. And I'm going to throw it out there for you to consider and roll around, kind of think about. And here it is. Who are we to decide that our resentment is justified? Who are we to decide whether our resentment is justified? Think about it for a second. I don't even know my own motivations very well, let alone the motivations of someone else. Someone offends me, and I have no idea what their story is. I have no idea what their day is like or has been like, what abuse they've been through, what their brain chemistry is like, what health, financial, or relational struggles they're facing. All I know is that they have or are offending me in some way. And so in order to justify how I'm feeling about them, I make up stories. So I can justify my anger is totally righteous and my resentment is justified. You know what? It works. It does. And so for myself, I often, if I get caught in this cycle, I continue to do it. I just go through my day passing judgments on other people because they're standing in my way, and I build little offenses into these big, huge offenses. And I tell myself stories about them so I can feel better about myself and justify my judgment. And if you want to know if you're kind of caught in this insipid cycle, notice if you're saying this to yourself in the middle of all that. Yeah, I might not be perfect, but at least I'm not like those people. And we all know who those people are, don't we? Yeah, those people are the ones who change lanes without signaling. And when you beep your horn to say, hey, dude, I'm right here, they're the ones that flip you the bird, right? Those people are the ones who know everything about anything, and they'll let everyone know every chance they get. Those people are the ones who double dip with a chip. Those people are often arrogant, they're rude, and they're mean. Those people are the ones who don't do things the way I would. Those people, in short, are the ones who don't hold to the same values or beliefs as me. Yeah, I may not be perfect, but at least I'm not like those people. So the question remains, who are we to decide that our resentment is justified? And I'll throw this out for you to think about. I don't think it's up to us to decide. And here's why I say that. Way, way back in the Garden of Eden, the first sin was eating from the forbidden tree. And you know what that tree was called? It was called the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. God said, you can eat from any tree you want except for this one. And so that's the one we had to eat from. And ever since, we've been playing God, pretending we know good from evil. I mean, it's the original sin. Playing judge, condemning and accusing other people, and leeching a twisted form of life from it. And playing a role that we were never, ever intended to play. You know, the very heart, the very foundation of the human experience is to be in a relationship and love God and love others. That's our vision and our mission here, is to equip people to love God and love others every day, everywhere, no matter who they are. Jesus put it this way, he says, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is equally important. Love your neighbor as yourself. Again, that goes to the very root of our mission here. But it's our judgment of others that often prevents us from doing the one thing that we were created to do. To love people the way God loves us. Now, back in history, there was a man named Paul. We talk a lot about him around here. In the first part of his life, Paul was a man who was full of resentment. He was resentful and angry at those people. Those people who didn't see or believe or do the things that he did. And so he made it his mission to silence them, to wipe them off the map. And so he went and he garnered all the necessary support and authorization from the religious powers that be at the time. And he went around arresting people who insisted on following this man named Jesus, who they were saying rose from the dead after being crucified. And Paul would think, how ridiculous is that? What is it with those people? But then, after a miraculous encounter with the resurrected Jesus, Paul surrendered his life and will and care and control to that same Jesus. And God began to go to work in his heart. And shape him into a man of peace, free from resentments and from anger and from judgment. And in a letter he wrote to some first century Christians in a church that was had that whole us versus them mentality that we're kind of sitting in right now as a society and a culture, he wrote this as he made his journey with Jesus. Here's what he wrote. Listen to this. He says, "It doesn't matter to me if I'm judged by you or even a court of law. In fact, I don't judge myself. I don't know of anything against me, but that doesn't prove I'm right. The Lord is my judge. So don't judge anyone until the Lord returns. He will show what's hidden in the dark and what is in everyone's heart. And then God will be the one who praises each of us." You know, what Paul's saying there is, look, the key to living free from resentment and anger is to quit being the judge of everyone and everything, including, and don't miss this part, yourself. Paul wouldn't even judge himself. He didn't trust himself to judge himself. You know, we human beings, you, me, all of us, simply don't have the capacity to understand the motivations and intentions of everyone around us. It's a big enough challenge for us to do that to ourselves, to figure out our own motivations and intentions. The only way we can live in this freedom, this ability to live without judgment and resentment, comes, in case you missed it, by surrendering it, all our judgments, to God. Handing them over. Letting God do the God thing. trusting that only He knows our true intentions and our true motivations, that only He understands our messy backstory, and only God sees objectively the parts of our lives, the good, the not so good, the painful, the broken, the failures, the successes, and He sees all of that through eyes of perfect understanding, inexhaustible grace, and unconditional love. Jesus knows what people are like. He knows what you're like, and He knows what I'm like, better than we know ourselves. And He understands perfectly our human bent towards judgment and resentment, and how those things make us dangerously unqualified to be trusted to be the judge of others. As followers of Jesus, as people who have received this radical love, the most radical love imaginable, we're asked to share that love to others. Called to love everybody. Yes, even those people. And that can be difficult because those people are everywhere, aren't they? If you're late for a meeting, those people are the ones that are in front of you. And here's the thing, it's more difficult to love those people today than ever before because there's so much division, so much polarization over all the different issues that we're facing today. But here's something humbling to think about. You, me, we're all those people in someone else's eyes. We're the ones who are absurd, irrational, pig-headed, ignorant, foolish, illogical from someone else's point of view. We're like the guy in that opening video who is casting judgment on the other man, making up a story. When we're offended and allow the feeling of annoyance to take root, resentment and judgment are close behind. And so as we've heard today, we often pass judgment. We find ourselves in the judgment seat without knowing the other person's story. And here's the truth. We all have a story. You have a story. I have a story. And others may or may not know that story. A few years ago, our middle daughter, Carly, she's always wanted to travel the world. So she decided she wanted to go to school in Australia. And so her mom and I were like, ooh, Australia, that's a long ways away. She hadn't been out of high school for very long. And so anyway, we put everything together. We said, okay, you can do this. It's going to be weird for us, but let's give this a shot. Now, flights were expensive. They still are. I mean, flying to Australia is not cheap. So heading down with her wasn't really an option. She was going to have to go on her own and figure this out, which kicked the dad gene in me into high alert. Because I wasn't going to be able to be there with her physically, to help her, to protect her, something I'd done my whole life with her. All of a sudden, it's just going to be like, okay, you're on your own. Well, anyway, I don't want to get all emotional here, but we get to the Nanaimo airport, okay? So we got our tickets and everything. She's all packed, ready to go. Long story short, we get to the checkout counter, and we put her suitcase on the scale. And the lady says, this is too heavy. And we said, well, we'll pay the extra. It's okay. She says, no, you are well beyond the extra. You know, you can't put this on a plane. It'll probably fly like this. So you're going to have to go through and pull all the non-essentials out. And so that's what we did. I'm looking at my watch going, oh man, we don't have much time to do this, so let's get at it. So we open up her suitcase and we're like, hey, Carney, do you need this? No, you don't. Right? And we're trying to pare this thing down. So we rip through it and we think, okay, I think we got it. Zip it back up, stick it on the scale. Lady's like, still too heavy. We're like, oh. She said, the only thing I can suggest for you is to get another bag, another suitcase, and split it up and check 2 bags. Well, there's nothing available in Nanaimo airport, so we're sitting there going, okay, so what do we do? And I said, well, I could whip to Harbor Park Mall and hope that they have a luggage place in there, but if they don't, we're hooped because I don't have time to go anywhere else. And that's when we said, you know what, we've got suitcases at home. Just go home and grab a suitcase. And so that's what I said, yeah, okay, well, I'm going to have just enough time to do this. So I hop in my car and I start heading for our house. I'm down at the airport. Our house is here by the mall. And off I go. And I make fairly good time. I get to the house. I go downstairs. And there's like 4 suitcases. And I'm like, which one do I grab? It's like, I'm bringing options. So I grabbed them all, threw them in the car, and off I went. And I start making my way back to the airport. And it's like, all those people decided to go for a drive. The traffic was brutal. And I'm like, I'm not going to make it. And so I channeled my inner Mario Andretti, who was this famous race car driver from the 70s and 80s. And I began weaving my way in and out of traffic. If there's any police here, I'm going to deny all of this, okay? Very quickly, I became one of those people. And I could tell because never before had I been given the gesture that I'm number one so often and so fast. Now get this. Again, I'm denying any of this, okay? So don't try and do a retro ticket or anything here. I came up to the lights at Northfield on the Island Highway heading south, and it was going red. And I'm like, I don't have time for a light. And so here's what I did. I turned right into there's that little tourist area. So I hung a right and then immediately hung a left, cut across both lanes, back into the merge. I was like, yes! And people loved it because they were all giving me that gesture again, right? It was awesome. So I glance at my watch and it's like, I'm 15 minutes away. Carly's flight is 10 minutes from leaving. So right away I let my foot off the gas, resigning myself to the fact I'm not going to be able to see my daughter off and she's going to be gone for a year. Just as quickly, I feel my foot like, because this thought in my head is like, you're a dad, you can't give up, you got to do this. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so I started, do you know the bungee zone? They've got that check, your speed thing. And it flashes when you're going too fast. Let's just say it was flashing really fast, okay? I get to the airport, kind of four-wheel drifted into a taxi spot. All these people are staring at me like, what is this dude's problem? I grab the suitcases, and I'm running into the airport. This lady grabs her kid and kind of puts her between me and it's like, it's a madman. He's going into the airport. Get out of the way. But I get in there. Thankfully, Carly's flight's been delayed. I didn't know that. But here's the thing. From all appearances, I bet I looked like one of those people who knew when they were flying out, but chose to leave it to the last minute to get there, and now it's like, everyone get out of my way. And I totally get that. But that wasn't my story. All those people who saw me weaving in and out of traffic and doing all that crazy stuff, I'm sure they were judging me even though they didn't know my story. And I'm not saying my story justifies the way I was driving. I deserved all those number one gestures. But the point I'm trying to make is we don't know everyone's story. So we would do well to take time to remember that we don't know somebody's story the next time we're offended by somebody. And so I'm going to throw out a challenge for us. And here it is. The next time you were offended, and you will be offended, maybe even today when you're leaving here in the parking lot, somebody cuts you off, before we get all riled and fired up and, what's that person's problem? Just take a breath and say, I don't know their story. Because we don't. We see people ranting and raving on Facebook for the vaccine or against the vaccine, and we don't know the story behind why they're against the vaccine or why they're for the vaccine. We may not be aware that someone is in physical or emotional pain, and that's why they're lashing out at us or others. We have no idea the hurtful words that have been said to them, and now that's why they're saying them back to us. We don't know the story. And so here's a great way to, I love these instructions from Jesus about how we can respond in a better way when we find ourselves offended. Listen to this. He says, you're familiar with the old written law, love your friend and its unwritten companion, hate your enemy. I'm challenging that. I'm telling you to love your enemies. And get this, listen to what he says. Let them bring out the best in you, not the worst. When someone gives you a hard time, in other words, when you're offended, respond, Jesus says, with the supple moves of prayer. And a prayer could be simple as this. God, that person's ticking me off right now, but I don't know what that person is going through. I don't know their story. I don't know what grief they may be walking through or struggling with, what pressure they're under. And so help me to bless them rather than judge them. And Jesus says, for then, when you do that, when you tap into prayer, for then you are working out your true selves, your God-created selves. And he says, this is what God does. He gives his best, the sun to warm and the rain to nourish, to everyone, regardless the good, the bad, the nice, and the nasty. In other words, to those people. And I really believe, without a shadow of a doubt, that if we apply those words to our lives, it's going to be then that we can begin to be that light and that salt we talked about last week and begin to live a life with no offense. Really glad I get to be on this journey with you. Would you pray with me? God, there's no question that as we make our way through our day, we're going to bump into people that hold to different values, different beliefs, different ideals, and it can create friction. But you call us to something higher. You call us to love people regardless of what their stance is. And like we heard in that opening song, if there's just the two of us, are we going to be in that place where we can still be together and yet disagree? And that's the calling you give us. But you don't expect us to do it on our own. You're right there with us. And so I just pray that you would all give us just that thought in our mind as we are just ready to kind of jump on the bandwagon and start resenting somebody for maybe their stance on something or what they stand for or don't stand for. And just remember, we don't know their story, just like they don't know our story, and we wouldn't want to be judged without people knowing our story. We just thank you for your grace and your patience toward each one of us as we kind of clumsily and feebly follow you. And we thank you for it. And we pray all of this in your powerful name. Amen.